It's time to sit back, pour yourself a drink, and listen carefully, because what I'm about to share is not easy to say. For years, I lived beside a man who carried oaths heavier than love, heavier than truth. My husband is a Freemason, and tonight I will tell you why a man would break the oath he swore in the shadows of their temple. Before the lockdown, things had already grown terrifying. I realized I needed to leave behind a testimony, something the world could hear, something that would outlive my silence. You've heard the conspiracies, haven't you? That Freemasons rule the world, that they hold proof of life beyond our planet, that they sacrifice animals under candlelight or run naked through forests in rituals too absurd to believe. Most of these are distractions, lies fed to us by the media to keep us busy with foolish debates. But what I have seen, what I have heard, is far worse. I endured nights when his whispers carried names I should never know. I saw books hidden in drawers, pages rewritten to distort history to make their order appear noble. And I remember the terror of his first initiation, the way he returned home pale, trembling as if the temple had swallowed part of his soul. He never told me the location, never revealed the lodge. He said secrecy was survival, but I knew enough. I knew he belonged to something that demanded more than loyalty. It demanded silence, obedience, and sacrifice. He promised me that if I ever spoke, they would find us. That's why I cannot tell you where we lived or which lodge he served. But I can tell you this: the initiation was only the beginning. There were nights when he showed me strange versions of the Bible, passages twisted into something unholy. He spoke of the crucifixion as if the story we all knew was a lie. He hinted at the rituals that promised wealth, fame, and power, rituals that demanded a price no sane person would pay. And then there were the guests, men of influence, cloaked in respectability, who visited the lodge to deliver lectures that left him shaken. He never repeated their words, but I saw the fear in his eyes. That fear told me more than his silence ever could. The truth is, he was drawn in by someone he trusted, a professor, a mentor, a man of science who claimed to believe in God yet carried secrets in his veins. This man was 92 years old, frail yet desperate to pass his legacy to someone younger. He chose my husband. He told him, "You will learn things not meant for ordinary eyes. You will inherit what must remain hidden." My husband believed him. He believed the promise of knowledge, of belonging, of power. And I believed him too, until the night I realized that knowledge was not meant to enlighten, but to consume. My husband once told me that knowledge was a gift, something extraordinary, something worth surrendering everything for. He admired his professor deeply, and when the old man offered him a place in the lodge, he accepted without hesitation. He said it was out of respect, out of a desire to improve himself. But I know now, it was the beginning of a life-changing decision, one that chained him to secrets he could never escape. A week later, a gentleman called him, asking for his details, arranging a meeting at a precise hour. Not a minute sooner, not a minute later. It was 2015. He obeyed. He went. And when he returned, his eyes carried a shadow I had never seen before. He told me about the tiled room, the black cloth tied over his eyes, the chamber of reflection where he sat alone for an hour. He thought it was harmless, a ritual of theatrics. But later he discovered the truth, that this was no ordinary lodge. It was one of the special lodges, hidden from the public, known only to the elite. 9 members only, 9 men who carried power like a crown of fire. As he sat in that chamber, a figure emerged from the darkness. He described it to me once, his voice trembling, a grotesque man with a beard too large, eyes black as coal, teeth yellow and sharp. But what unsettled him most were the legs, twisted, animal-like, as if belonging to a dog. He told himself it was a costume, part of the initiation. He tried to believe it. The figure handed him a piece of paper, ancient and worn, with 3 questions written upon it. He had to answer yes to each one. Do you believe in the one and only great architect of the universe? Do you wish to receive his knowledge through our ancient ways? Do you swear to serve the Freemasons for the rest of your life? When he agreed, the figure pricked his finger with a needle and demanded he sign the paper in blood, beneath the eye of Providence. He obeyed. He signed. And in that moment he was bound. The professor returned, guiding him deeper into the temple. Blindfolded, half-naked, he was forced to break stone with a hammer, to drink strange liquids that burned his throat. He felt the cold touch of metal against his chest, and though he tried to laugh it off as theatrics, fear began to seep into him. Then came the words, the chant of the master, echoing through the chamber. "O he with many names, accept your newest humble servant into our brotherhood. Our master who dwells in fiery light, free in spirit, accept this apprentice into our ranks." They made him repeat the chant 3 times. All hail Jarbion, hail Jabbar, hail Shah Baba. And when the words were spoken, they told him he was reborn. Reborn forever, through the square and compass, under 3 eternal lights. That night when he came home, he did not speak. He only stared at me, his eyes hollow, his hands trembling. I knew then that something inside him had changed. Something had been taken, and something else had been given in return. My heart was pounding when they finally removed the blindfold. Around me, every sword was raised, forming a circle with only a narrow opening. And then it happened. Someone rushed through that gap, charging straight toward my husband. He told me the figure was dressed like a goat, horns long and sharp, eyes hidden behind a mask. It stopped just inches away, watching him tremble. A deep voice echoed from behind the disguise, chanting words he barely understood. "Coagula loc nabrit." The others joined in, their voices rising in unison. He repeated the chant, his fear swallowed by ritual. The goat figure retreated, and suddenly the room erupted in applause. One by one, they shook his hand, calling him brother. His teacher explained later that these theatrics symbolized the eternal struggle between good and evil. To them, he was reborn. To me, he was changed. But that was only the beginning. His journey carried him far beyond the temple walls, to places I never imagined he would go. One of those places was Chernobyl. He confessed to me that he visited the Pripyat Grand Lodge exactly 30 years after the disaster. He said it was no accident, no provocation, just fate. He claimed to have seen authentic documents, handed to him by military intelligence officers in Ukraine. They showed how the Soviets tried to bury the truth, how even Gorbachev eventually admitted the disaster could not be contained. You know the story. You've read the books, seen the series, heard the voices of survivors. But what he told me was darker, details too gruesome to ever reach the screen. He spoke of rituals held in the shadow of the reactor, of Freemasons gathering in silence while the world mourned. He said they honored the dead, but also sought something else, knowledge hidden in catastrophe, power born from tragedy. He asked me once to hold a moment of silence with him, for the firefighters, the doctors, the scientists who gave their lives to contain the disaster. I did. But as I stood there, I wondered if his silence was truly for them, or for the secrets he carried back from that place. My husband told me that when the blindfold was finally removed, his heart nearly burst. He stood in the center of a circle, swords raised high, their steel glinting in the dim light. The blades formed a wall around him, leaving only a narrow opening. From that gap, something charged forward, a figure dressed as a goat, horns long and twisted, its movements violent, enraged. It stopped inches from his trembling body. He said he could feel its breath, hot and foul, seeping through the mask. A voice, deep and unnatural, spoke from behind the disguise. "Coagula loc nabrit." The words were heavy, ancient, and everyone around him repeated them in unison. His fear was so great that he joined the chant, his voice shaking, desperate to belong. The goat figure retreated into the shadows, and suddenly the room erupted in applause. One by one, they shook his hand, calling him brother. His teacher leaned close and whispered, "This is the balance of life, good and evil, light and shadow. You are reborn now." But rebirth was only the beginning. Years later, his path led him to Chernobyl. He confessed to me that in 2016, the lodge received an invitation from their Ukrainian brothers. The Pripyat Grand Lodge. The date was deliberate. April 26th, the 30th anniversary of the disaster. They hesitated. Irradiation, sickness, even whispers of mutants haunted their thoughts, but refusal would have been seen as disrespect. So they accepted. 3 cars carried them across borders, 17 hours of travel. They stopped in Moldova, slept in a hotel owned by one of the brothers, and continued the next day. Near Pripyat, they were greeted with handshakes and fraternal embraces. The Ukrainians had prepared a tour. Reactor 4, the Duga radar, the ghost town frozen in time. They ate a Soviet-style lunch as if history itself had been resurrected. Then came the Red Forest. Hazmat suits, dosimeters, military escorts. They were led underground, 3 floors below, into a bunker where the meeting was held. Speeches were exchanged, rituals performed, but what followed was no ordinary banquet. The wine shimmered in multiple colors, shifting like liquid jewels. Mushrooms glowed phosphorescent green, casting eerie light across the table. Meat appeared charred, blackened on the outside, yet melted tender inside. Fish carried pale flesh with crimson tails. Potatoes hummed faintly as if alive. And the tea, oh, the tea was unlike anything he had ever known. Its scent shifted with every breath. Warm summer mornings, rain-soaked earth, frozen snow. It was as if all seasons lived inside that single cup. He told me he sat there, staring at the food, wondering if it was real. Wondering if he was being mocked, forced to eat a rainbow of impossibilities. But the Ukrainian brothers assured them these were rare delicacies, known only to 333 people in the world. Then the master of the Pripyat Lodge raised his glass and whispered, "My brothers, let me lead you to the greatest secret of Chernobyl." They descended deeper to a cage. Inside was a man, or what seemed to be one. He begged, pleaded, claimed he was trapped. My husband whispered to his professor, outraged, asking why they tormented him, but the master heard. "You will see," he said. The chanting began. Latin phrases filled the air. Liquids were poured over the prisoner. And then the transformation started. Claws tore through his fingers. Hair spread across his body. His clothes ripped apart. Teeth sharpened into monstrous razors. His eyes burned crimson. He was no longer a man, but something unholy, unnatural. The creature roared, "I will escape. I will kill you all. You have confined me for 400 years, but one day I will end this world in blood." My husband was petrified. His professor remained calm, as if this horror was routine. The master explained. This was an ancient warlord, captured centuries ago. The Freemasons had kept him alive, experimenting, trying to alter his mind to replicate him, to build armies of creatures for future wars. Another liquid was thrown. The beast shrieked, sounds not of this world, before collapsing back into human form. They laughed. My husband did not. He asked, nearly crying, why they didn't kill it. The master's eyes hardened. Because he is too valuable, perhaps immortal. That night they fainted. When they awoke, they were in a hotel that felt alive, shifting like a moving building. On the table was a note thanking them for their visit, promising future meetings and a gift, a bottle of that strange tea. He never opened it, and I pray he never will.
My husband had already grown accustomed to the strange rituals inside the temple. But nothing could prepare him for the secrets that lived outside of it. Secrets never meant for ordinary people. Secrets only the Freemasons would share. 2 years ago, he attended an international gathering in Prague. The setting was a hotel drenched in history, walls that had witnessed centuries of decadence, chandeliers glittering above men and women dressed in the finest clothes, sipping rare wines and spirits. But that night, the banquet was different. It was filled with powerful Freemasons, men whose names were known across the world, men who controlled empires, industries, fortunes, men who spoke of technologies that sounded like science fiction, and of futures that ordinary people would never be allowed to see. My husband listened in silence, overwhelmed. He told me later that he felt both awe and dread. The professor, his mentor since 2014, whispered that these were the wonders of the world. But my husband confessed to me that their definition of wonders was twisted. What they called wonders, he saw as horrors. The banquet seemed to end like any other. Men in black suits, glasses raised, voices murmuring about progress and destiny. But then, something unusual happened. The professor leaned close. He pulled my husband away from the glittering chandeliers, away from the polished marble floors, into the shadows of the corridor. His voice was calm, deliberate, almost rehearsed. Tomorrow, at midnight, we will attend a meeting. Just the two of us and the master. But others will be there too. Very powerful men, very influential men. My husband tried to laugh, to break the tension. What is it this time, Professor? Vampires, Czech monsters, some dark god of Bohemia. The professor smirked. His tone carried irony, but no warmth. Very funny. No, this meeting will take place in a church, 200 kilometers from Prague, in the village of Likava. Likava. The name meant nothing to my husband, but the way the professor spoke it, heavy, ominous, made it sound like a curse. He explained that one of their brothers from the United Kingdom had mentioned this church, that it was different, unlike any other in the country. Why it was chosen, no one dared to ask. What would happen there, no one wanted to know. My husband admitted to me that curiosity burned inside him. He wanted to demand answers. But the professor silenced him with a single phrase. Be careful, son. Curiosity killed the cat. That night, my husband returned unsettled. He said the professor's words echoed in his mind, not as a warning, but as a prophecy. He tried to sleep. He could not, because deep down he knew whatever awaited him in that church would not be ordinary. It would be darker. It would be hidden. And it would change him again.